Hola, gringas y gringos, and welcome to
Gringos R Us.
Expats with a Plan.
I'm Mark.
I'm Gina.
I'm John
And I'm David.
of the Queer Money Podcast.
We're going to do an interview with them coming up next.
And welcome back.
These guys are going to answer some questions about money, which we all like and we all need. So, tell us a little bit about your podcast and your YouTube channel, because I know that our viewers would like anything that's going to help them get a little bit ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. So we have the Queer Money Podcast, which has actually been around, we're in our 11th year, but it was only about 2020 or so that we actually started to put the content up on YouTube. And about 2 years ago, we really started to dial up the quality of our videos. But the reason we got into this space was because David and I both had a career in financial services. And despite all of that knowledge that we had, it wasn't until a year and a half after we got together that we talked about our own personal finances and realized that we had $51,000 in credit card debt. So we paid off that debt in under 3 years, used our theoretical and real life knowledge to create what was at that time the Debt Free Guys blog and book, and then we eventually started the Queer Money Podcast.
Excellent. And so, what is the secret? do we have to watch? We have to watch the podcast.
Yeah, I think that for most people, we kind of just go through life when it comes to our finances. Whatever comes up, we do whatever we need to do to make it through that time period, and we don't have a lot of planning ahead of it. You said, you're expats with a plan. Well, we're finance guys with a plan. And it wasn't until John and I had that serious conversation about why were we in $51,000 in credit card debt, why were we watching a lot of our counterparts, especially traditional sex couples, husbands and wives that we had as friends, who were buying homes, were taking the vacations that we wanted to take, that were having families, and we're like, how are they all able to afford to do this? And it really was that we decided, what did we really want our lives to look like? We were having a lot of fun in those days when we were taking on all that credit card debt. We were taking some fancy vacations, but we were putting that all on credit cards. We were taking the vacation, coming back from the vacation, planning and taking the next vacation before we had the first one paid off. And so we were living what we called a fabulously broke life.
Oh, man.
And so we decided that we wanted to really narrow down what was really important to us. What did we want our spending to look like? There was a quote from someone that we followed, Dr. DeMartini, and he said, "Show me what you spend your money on, and I'll show you what your values are." And so we all of a sudden realized that our lives financially were not aligning with what our values, or at least what we said our values were. So we said that we wanted our lives to have four main components, especially when it came to our spending. We wanted a safe and comfortable retirement. We wanted to spend more time together, which eventually led us to starting our own business. We wanted to be able to take those vacations but not have the credit card hangover when we came home. We wanted to do them with cash. And then we wanted to give back to our community, both with our money, with our time, and with our energy. And it was when we decided that that's what we were going to start spending our money on, that we didn't need to have that $45 bottle of wine 3 or 4 times a week, that we didn't always need to go to Whole Foods to buy our groceries, that we didn't always need to be wearing the designer clothes or taking these great vacations and not paying for them in cash.
And while we're a same-sex couple without children, my argument is that we probably have a lot of similar challenges that your community has. We know from our straight friends who have children the inordinate number of expectations that they have to put their kids through all the programs, thousands of dollars to play rugby and soccer and to go to these camps.
Yes.
And they've got to, the girls have to have a new dress twice a year for homecoming and
Dance
for prom,
lessons,
and it's
cheer.
just so much money that's going out. And then of course the kids need a phone every year because the new phone comes out from Apple or whomever. So a lot of us, I would argue, whether you're straight or LGBTQ+, a lot of us are spending our money so that we can validate ourselves in society, so that we don't feel like the neighbors are judging us, or that we feel like we fit in, right? I think it's like 80% of the time that somebody gets a new car in the neighborhood, somebody else is also going to get one within the next month.
Yeah.
And that's all because we're all, even if we can't articulate it, we're all kind of competing with each other.
It's true.
That's takes you all the way back to Waylon Jennings, Lukenbach, Texas. So busy keeping up with the Jones.
Yep.
2-car garage and we're still building on.
Yep.
And so you have to realize that if you're going to do these types of things, you have to set the goals. And you guys were spot on when you were talking about creating the plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you're just wandering aimlessly, and you have no way of being able to effectively track or to say, this is our goal, and we need to be on this, and we need to be, have midpoint goals and go, are we meeting it? Are we falling short? Those types of things. So, no, you guys are spot on that.
And it seems like no matter what, if you don't have a plan, there's always going to be something or someone who's going to come along and say, spend your money on this, especially in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many people don't have enough money saved for a $400 emergency without having to use a credit card, or why so many people, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and not saving for a fabulous retirement or even any sort of retirement, because we just always, there's always a reason to spend, right? Unless you have something that says, John and I always used to say, do we want the margarita today at the Mexican restaurant in Denver, or do we want it on the beach in Puerto Vallarta? And we kept on saying that to each other.
95% of the time it's Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
And that's what allowed us to take our first vacation to Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great way of saying it. Where do you want it to occur?
Yeah.
And when do you want it to occur?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how life jumps at you so often when, it knows that you've got a little extra money in the bank, and that's when the refrigerator goes, I'm dying. And you're like, really? Or the car does something, and you're just like, why? Why now?
Why?
So any recommendations for the people who are either living here in Mexico or are planning to move to Mexico on how to set themselves up so that they can access money and still keep track of what's going on with their money?
Well, I think that the first thing is most people don't track their money. I think that it's something like 86% of Americans say that they have a budget, but only something like 14% of people actually stick to it, right? They're not actually following their budget. And so the first thing is to understand where your money is at, where it's going when you spend it, and how much is actually coming in. So many people say, I earn $75,000 a year, but they don't realize that they're actually only bringing home $55,000. So that's why they spend more than they make, is because they don't really track it all.
Right.
And to be honest, that was the first thing that I did when we decided to get out of credit card debt, is I looked at every single penny that we had spent in the previous 12 months. And it was just like, it opened our eyes as to where our money was really going. And we all of a sudden we were like, well, if we just cut that category in half and that category by 75%, boom, we've got money to invest in our Roth IRAs. So it's tracking the money makes you aware. And especially when you are moving abroad or thinking about moving abroad, there's always this ramp up in your spending for the first couple of years before you retire, and then the first couple of years after you retire, and then you kind of get back to a baseline. And it's during that time period where a lot of people spend like they're on vacation, or they spend because they're getting ready to retire. So I've got to get this before I retire. Or as soon as you're done, you have retired, it's like, yay, we're on vacation, and you spend like you're on vacation. If you truly want to be able to retire and retire comfortably, figure out a way to level that out a little bit. I mean, obviously it's still fun to have that little bit of spending, but level it out a little bit so that you can carry that money forward to times when you are going to maybe need it. Especially, we were talking before this idea that a lot of people, when they move to Mexico, self-insure. They don't have insurance like we have in the United States. So we have to pay cash for all of the things that we
Yep.
will do, for whether it's getting our teeth cleaned or going to the doctor because we're sick, or we fall down and we break a bone, right? All of those kinds of things are going to come out of our pocket. So you probably need more in emergency savings in your emergency savings bucket if you when you plan to move abroad than you do while you're at home.
And
Yeah.
a good plan for that, folks, is think about it this way. You're not having to pay the premiums every month, but pay yourself and put that money into that account
Yeah.
that is sitting there just waiting for that time when it goes, uh-oh, somebody's got to go to the hospital. Well, now the money's sitting there. And if you're fortunate enough to be down here in Mexico and get a Mexican bank account, you are going to get a premium on your interest rate by doing it down here.
Yeah. And I'll add, especially for those of you who are preparing to move abroad and are still working on creating those finances, set that up in separate accounts. If you have one account where everything is in it, you don't know how much you save for emergencies, how much you have saved for travel, how much you save. We have buckets. They're called sinking funds.
Oh.
You have buckets for each, and we have separate accounts. We have one set aside for our taxes. We have one set aside for Christmas. We have one set aside for travel. We have one, and so we have all these, and we know how much. That tells you how much you can spend or how much you have saved for an emergency. That gives you a little bit of stress relief when you know that you're preparing for all of those, and it kind of excites you, especially if you're working towards a specific goal.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to add one little caveat to living abroad. You have to be concerned about the exchange rates. They fluctuate. And so I always recommend to people, please set aside a minimum of 10% more than you think you're going to need. Because I can tell you right now, in the last 6 months, our rent equivalent has gone up $250 because the exchange rate has varied.
The only thing I'll add to that is that we've been talking with our audience lately about how international markets are outperforming the United States markets. So we've been encouraging our folks to start investing and diversifying outside of the United States so that you can keep up with the cost of living. Because even though the stock market in the United States is up 17% last year, outside of the U.S., it's up over 30%, but the cost of living is becoming exponentially more expensive in the U.S. relative to international markets. So
Right.
start diversifying outside of the U.S.
We hope you guys have been able to garner a little bit of information that John and David have shared with us here. Great info. And for more of that info, check out their YouTube channel, Queer Money. The link is right up there. These guys will help get you going on the right path and allow you to maybe even enjoy your life here in Mexico a little more. And it's hard not to do that because it is wonderful down here.
Sure is. Thank you guys for being on our,
Thank
on our
Thank you.
channel.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
That's going to do it for this interview. We appreciate you tuning in.
we are. Gringos are us.
Expats with a plan.
Remember, we're doing it. You can too.